Good evening, Angela, and welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Thank you, Mildred. Good evening, our viewers. Happy New Year, and Happy New Year to all NTV Uganda viewers. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Happy New Year too.
Thank
Now,
you.
Angela, we noted that there was an alarming case of learners, particularly males, dropping out of school. What do you think should be done to enhance the gap of the equity when it comes to sexes in all learning?
When we had that announcement that there are a number of boys that are dropping out of schools, I know for the longest time we've been talking about girls, affirmative action in favor of girls and all that. We have to also understand that we are still living with the effects of COVID. We know that a number of children went into child labor, and majority of those children who are doing child labor are boys. I'll give you an example. When you look at an area like Busoga sub-region, you know they have a lot of agricultural production when it comes like to sugar cane and things like that. The people who are in those plantations are not just the ones run by companies, but also for the outgrowers, they are boys. And if they are in those plantations, that means they are not in school. But why did they have to go to those plantations in the first place? I'm not saying it is the one major reason. It's one of the reasons that is responsible for dropout, especially in such areas. So you find that the reason why they went out there was because of COVID. Okay, COVID made it worse. We had children in child labor. But when they were out of school for that long, you remember what happened with Uganda. So a number of children went into child labor, and majority were boys. So that is why I'm saying that we are still living with the effects of COVID.
What then do you think we need to do to ensure that this gap is bridged?
One of the things that we have been advocating for is that, first of all, we understand why are children going into child labor. One number reason, it is poverty. But these are children. If you're born in a poor family, should you be condemned? I think every child should get equal opportunity. That is why we have been advocating for social protection and child-sensitive social protection, where children from such families are supported. Their parents are supported, and those children are able to go to school. Because the reason why they are going in those places, one, is because they have to supplement family income. I was doing research on child labor as the organization, as ISA, were doing it with Human Rights Watch. And one of the areas we went to was Buikwe, you know, with the lake and the agriculture and all that. And we met a 9-year-old boy. This boy was out of school. His father was bedridden, and they are staying with the grandmother. And so the grandmother cannot do much. This boy spends all day as a scarecrow in someone's rice field. And when we talked to him, he was so heartbroken. He's like, I want to go to school, but my grandmother cannot afford, and my father is bedridden, and my mother left my father when he was sick. So for such a family, honestly, government should be able to come and take full support. That is why we advocate for social protection. And it doesn't have to be full scale first, but there are those families that have to be supported. But also when you do it and it is child sensitive, the government should be able to trace that boy.
Well, talking about figures, do you think it is even possible to ascertain how many of these children actually dropped out of school, especially when it came to the time for doing PLA? Because you realize, for instance, in P1, when they're registering, it is a big number. Let's say, let's give an example of maybe 1 million students register for P1. But when it comes to primary 7 living exams, many of them are off. So do you think, could you put a figure to it?
I'm not going to give you national figures, but I'm going to give you specific examples, because we do ongoing monitoring and documentation, and we go to schools. But in most of the rural schools that we have been to, when you go to P1, I'll give you an example, you'll have like 150 or 200. P2 is still the same. P3, but when you get to P4, the numbers start dropping sharply. So it's not just about those who sit P7. The numbers drop from around primary 4. Primary 5, it gets bad. 6, it is worse. And in primary 7, when you started with 150 in P1, in primary 7, you have 25. That is the story in most of those rural schools. And you know the reason why they are dropping out?
What is the reason?
It is infrastructure. The infrastructure does not support learning. If you're studying under a tree, if you are a girl, and then you reach into that stage where you're going to have your periods, and the latrine is very unhygienic, and you also don't have what to use at school. So there are two dimensions. Most of those latrines are condemned. So NGOs, development partners have tried to construct in the new schools, government has tried to put up, but there are schools that are doing badly off, as in you walk in, even as an adult. I don't know whether I can demonstrate for you, Mildred.
So
you're as an adult, you can tiptoe and say, I'm not going to step on the maggot, say? Now just imagine a young child.
This also in turn affects their performances.
Because you're missing out on school. You're not going to go to school and be able to study because you're thinking about, like, if I'm in my periods, I don't have access to a toilet.
But
and you'll stay home. When you stay home, you're missing school.
But there seems to be an uncertainty on whether this is actually only affecting rural or urban. It seems to be an open thing. But from your deliberation, you're putting it on the rural setting. Should we say that this is not affecting the urban setting?
Mildred, you know that there are a number of children who are ungraded, right? And the minister talked about those ungraded children. Do you think those ungraded children are coming from urban areas? They are not. I think what Ministry of Education should be doing in releasing this is not to go on the surface and be able to provide disaggregated data. And when we say disaggregated data, you go to that level and you say, who are these ungraded children? You don't just put ungraded and then you go away and just leave a blanket figure like that. These children are not coming from Kampala. These children are not coming from Entebbe. These children are not coming from Jinja. The children who are ungraded are coming from rural areas, from poor regions, where children do not have the basic infrastructure, where teachers are not motivated, and teachers are driving border borders. The inspection is weak, and so the inputs, you don't have the inputs.
And well, staying on that same point, actually the just recent released PLE results show that the number of the ungraded students has actually risen to about over 88,000. What does this say about the standard of education?
That we are jokers. I think we are jokers. Because ungraded means that a child has gone through a system, and that system is so weak. Because when it comes to results, the immediate blame goes to the child. And me, I want to run away from that. Where is the accountability on the other part? Where is the accountability from the school? And where is the accountability from government? Because I think for you to be ungraded means that you've not even got division 4. You do not.
Literally, you've just written your name and left the
You
exam.
cannot continue to the next level, which in our normal system is senior 1. So if you are a school and you are an administrator, you are the teachers, and you have had a child from P1 until P7, and they are ungraded, what does that show about the system? Because this is not just about the child. There are a number of factors at play.
And one of the solutions that the ministry is actually looking at is to give them a window of hope, a second chance for them to repeat. Do you think this is something viable?
If you are ungraded and they tell you to repeat, I don't think you're going to post different results from our system. Because when you're ungraded, it shows, like what you have just said, Mildred, that probably you wrote your name and wrote other things on that paper. Because ungraded is, it's like you've not even learned how to write. You can't spell. You can't spell. So how are you going to pass English when you can't spell? So if you can't spell, can you understand grammar? And English governs all the other subjects. That is why in our system, English and mathematics, even if you get D1 in other subjects, which is not possible, and you post a 9 in those subjects, you have to go to the next grade. So English is a major factor. So that means you do not have the capacity even to interpret the question. That is what it means. So there are people, when you sit with them and when you give them to write, like you set an exam and you give them to write, they don't know what to write, or they'll write something that is wrong. And maybe you've interacted with this person, they're like, no, but this person knows this thing. And when you talk to them and try to ask, you will see that they will give you the answer. So part of the learning is supposed to be that you have capacity to read a question and be able to interpret it and know what they are looking for and put down the answer. So that means even that capacity is not there.
For 7 years?
Yes.
You have on a number of occasions called for investment in UPE, and in your deliberations you have clearly highlighted that the gaps in the investment could be leading to some of the children dropping out and also leading to poor performances. Are you satisfied with the investment so far in UPE?
So when you look at, for instance, the UPE capitation grants, UPE capitation grant, this is the money that government sends to the primary schools, the government primary schools, to be able to run, basically general running. That does not include like the wage bill, so that is paid separately, but just the money that is used for running the schools. And when you look at the unity cost, we have been advocating that the money is not sufficient. We started from, the figures have been going up a bit from 4,000 to 5,000 to 8,000, 10,000 and above. But when you look at that in real terms and also look at the cost of living, that money is grossly insufficient because the inputs, things are high because of inflation and all that. So when schools receive that money is not enough. They are barely surviving. Mildred, I'll give you an example that on average you will find that a normal school is receiving in a term about 1.2 million shillings. You know, it is also calculated per head, the number of learners that you have. But do you think 1.2 million shillings is enough to run a school for 3 months? Do you think it is sufficient in Uganda today? So the money is still low, but from our research and engagement, we know that just increasing the money is not enough. So it has to be the investment, which is the money, accompanied by accountability, but also the governance structures. And the governance structures at that level is the school management committee. So even if you put more money in those schools and the governance structures are not working, then you will not get the results that you want.
So finally, as we conclude this conversation, let's go to the cost of returning to school. I mean, students, I think about next week will be returning to school, as well as those that are just joining senior one. And the burden mostly is left to the parents when it comes to, the tuition fees and all of that. Do you understand why the government has left it to schools to charge as much as possible, as we conclude?
Government has said that they are trying to make sure that they are going to put more money in UPE to make it completely free, because the reasons why administrators are charging parents is because the money they put in is little. So they want to put in more money and make sure they don't charge. But also what we see is that the issue of school fees, I think, is a legal problem, legal and policy problem. That is where we should start. We know that the Minister of Education has an obligation. It is a statutory obligation to regulate fees in both government and private schools. And they should do it from time to time. The Minister is supposed to issue statutory instruments regulating fees. As long as government does not regulate fees, we are going to get into a scenario of what NTV is going to be reporting about is school detentions. You see how you're already reporting about hospital detentions? You're going to be reporting about school detentions because children are going to be detained at school. But one other thing,
As we conclude,
there is also a lot of exploitation that is happening. And this is for both government-aided and private schools. They admit numbers beyond their capacity, and you know when you're beginning, there is a lot of money that you pay, knowing that they are going to cut off these children and the parent is going to end up suffering. But for them, they are in business. And education is not supposed to be a business. It's a public good, for heaven's sake.
Thank you, Angela, for making time to speak to us. Now, that is Angela Kasule, the Executive Director at Initiative for Social and Economic Rights, getting to share with us on the PLA results. And with that, we take a break, but NTV Weekend Edition continues shortly.